You no doubt have seen all the stories about the girl who got sent home after a culture day where she dared to wear a Union Jack dress. Um, well, as always, it's the detail in these stories, and when the truth comes out, as it inevitably does with these stories, that get ignored. In terms of, shall we say, the more far-right extremist rhetoric that would fall, shall we say, more to be preferred. And I want to set something very straight indeed. I do not think this girl is to blame. I think ultimately it is her dad, because it is her dad who started this media frenzy. It is, I think, ultimately her dad that is now forcing her onto a stage with Tommy Robinson, of all people, to take front and center on this. I blame him first and foremost. And I think it is absolutely insane what he is doing to her, because this is going to follow her around for the rest of her life. Very, very much so. And I feel so sorry for her, because the truth, as always, is, should we say, not the first casualty. And as the old Terry Pratchett quote says, a lie can get halfway around the world before the truth can get its boots on, but when it does get its boots on, it can lap it 3 times and clip its head or something like that. I forget how the full quote goes now, but the truth of the situation, first of all, a lot of rumors saying that she was expelled. She wasn't expelled. She wasn't excluded. Is real. That was voluntary. What happened was she was put in isolation, because it all turns out, and this is the thing, there's everything. If you look at what people have, like journalists who've actually done the investigation to this, there was a presentation element. And up until that point, she had been at school perfectly fine. And at that point, where the teachers see her presentation, that's where she got isolated. And then she messages her parents. That's when they come and collect her. Like, she wasn't excluded. The school didn't say, go home. The parents came and collected her voluntarily and took her out of school. That's what happened. So all this fuss, generally, all this fuss, all this pain, this, I think, absolute stress, as you'll see in a moment, that these teachers have been put through, is completely unfair. Meanwhile, of course, Warwickshire's new reform leaders taking absolute advantage of this, to now that in September, the school is going to host a British Culture and Values Assembly. I hope the people that get into the assembly are like, you know what, British values, we are all about multiculturalism. I hope they do that. I really hope they do that. Just go as woke as possible, because I tell you now, if I were that head teacher, that's what I would do. Because after this, they ain't going to care. After this, they are generally not going to care. I would make that assembly like the most open, inclusive assembly I could. That's what I would do. Because guess what? These reform people ain't gonna care. After this, they've had their fun. They've had their 15 minutes of fame now. But now, here comes the ridiculousness, and I think this is absolutely insane, because it really looks like the way this is phrased, and feel free to disagree with me, but we'll see in a moment, the way that this is phrased from this reform guy at the Warwickshire Council really comes across like this assembly has been forced on the school, like really forced on the school. Now, I do not know 100% what a relationship would be between like local schools and councils are. Now, I do know that the councils do have some control, but I'm not sure how much control exactly. So I'm sure there'll be someone in the chat who's more experienced and more knowledgeable in that area that can tell us more on that. But it really does seem to me that this seems forced. And I also, again, don't blame the head teacher for maybe accepting this, because as you'll see in a moment, this school had to close for the summer early because the amount of extremist threats they have received, all coming from the far right. And I also blame these reform people as well, because this councillor is a coward for not calling out the people who have been, you know, engaging in those threats, because it's people on his side. So, yeah. But anyway, we'll get more into this. So before, of course, we continue, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, as always, the links down below to the like, share, and of course, subscribe button as well. Don't forget, of course, to ring the bell as well. There's also the Patreon page. There's the Buy Me Coffee link where you can well buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button. And of course, as always, there's the YouTube membership down below as well. So let's go on into this then, shall we? So this is from one of the local papers. Warwickshire's reform leaders meet now with Bilton School and, quote, agree they will hold an assembly on British culture and values. So, the Reform UK leaders at Warwickshire councils said they have now met with Bilton School and agreed that they will now hold a whole school assembly on the importance of British culture and values. Anyway, this all came now after the controversy when 12-year-old Courtney Wright was now punished for wearing a Union Jack school dress to the school's culture day. Sadly, some people have now since sent threats to members of staff at the school after the story went viral across the world. Reform UK have now the most seats on Warwickshire County Council, said that it was now shocking and unacceptable that school staff received abuse. Again, where's all this abuse come from? It's people on your side. It's people like Tommy Robinson have been whipping up this stuff. Adding that we urge now the local community to treat staff fairly now. This is now a regrettable incident that is now being made right. Talking about the issue, of course, Cllr George Finch, the interim leader of Warwickshire County Council, said, I'm, of course, relieved to hear that Bilton School has now offered their unreserved apology for their disgraceful treatment of Courtney Wright. It was unacceptable now for the school to send home Courtney from school during the culture day. So I am sure that their apology will be welcomed by the local community. Except, again, that's not true. She was not sent home for the Union Jack dress. It was all to do with this presentation. That's when she got isolated. That's when her parents came to pick her up. What was in that presentation? So he continues, though. He said, I do reiterate that the treatment now of Courtney received by Bilton School is, of course, wrong at best and would fairly be labelled as bullying. Courtney's Geri Halliwell inspired outfit is, of course, a fantastic representation of British culture. I don't see how it is, but okay. Feminism and optimistic girl power espoused by the Spice Girls back in the 90s. Not only this, it fits into Bilton School Cultural Day brief perfectly, where students were asked to come dressed in an outfit that symbolized culture. There were, of course, more culturally significant outfits now in recent British history, and such an iconography ought to be celebrated, not shut down. That seems a massive reach trying to justify this, but there you go. When we first learned of Courtney's treat via social media, again, via social media, but there you go. I, and of course, many of my fellow reform councillors were, of course, outraged at this. The first responsibility of all staff in education environment is, of course, to ensure the safety and well-being of all its students. Bilton School failed to deliver, quote, the basics, and I have made my dismay very clear now to the chief executive of the trust. And again, I feel so sorry for that chief executive having to deal with these idiots. And I think maybe eventually, sooner or later, more truth will come out about this. I really do think so. But again, safety and well-being, I don't see how her safety and well-being will have been impacted by this, honestly. He went on to add, myself and, of course, Councillor Cheshire for the Environment, Heritage and Culture, and, of course, Councillor Briggs for Education, met with the Bilton Trust CEO, Ranjit Sharma, and we are, of course, pleased to hear that the Trust and the school have now unreservedly apologised to Courtney and her family. But we made it, of course, abundantly clear that we do not believe an apology alone is enough. And this is where I think this is where this guy got forced into doing this. Because imagine this. We don't think this apology alone is enough. So now they've had this assembly forced on them. Very, very much so. And if this guy plays his card right, and I think he actually absolutely should, I'm just going to like look at how wonderful Britain is as a multicultural society today. Absolutely. Please do that. That will send them into an absolute hissy fit. And he's like, what do you mean this is British values? It's like, but it's not. God, please do that. Please do that when you've got to try and get them to suddenly start saying that, you know, multiculturalism isn't part of, quote, British cultural values, to which you should turn around and say, oh, but what is part of British cultural values then? That will be fun. That will be fun. If this guy plays his cards right, it will be, oof, it will be fun. Anyway, so this is what happened. So remember, they've said an apology known is not enough. We, of course, recommended to the school. Again, recommended. I somehow think it wasn't recommended to them. That they should now, of course, go further than, of course, an apology and should organise a whole school assembly on the importance now of British culture and values. A recommendation I'm delighted to hear has now been accepted and will be taking place when students return in September. Again, please let this be like all about like British, you know, multiculturalism. Good God. Let that be it. Anyway, with positive progress, of course, being made, it's time now for Bilton School and the wider community now to come together. It is, of course, shocking and, of course, unacceptable that school staff have now been receiving abuse, and I urge the local community to now treat staff fairly now that this regrettable incident is, of course, now being made right. And, of course, that hasn't happened. It has continued. This guy isn't calling out the people who are doing this type of abuse. Most importantly, I do hope the students at Bilton School and their families do take comfort in the knowledge that this type of behaviour will not be tolerated in the United Kingdom, and certainly not in Warwickshire. Lastly, I hope that Courtney now has the courage to wear her amazing dress again. The ordeal she's been through. Oh no! What was in the presentation she was meant to be doing? Because that's what sparked it all. That's what sparked it all. It was all to do with this presentation. What was in that presentation that got us sent to isolation? That then her parents came and picked her up. What was in that presentation to get her isolated? Or to be sent to isolation, which again is a punishment. Interesting, this. But, you know, now she's going to be paraded on stage with Tommy Robinson. I think that's all down to the family doing this. I don't think she has a clue, quite frankly. As a 12-year-old, I don't think she should be blamed for this. But this is going to follow her now for the rest of her life. And I feel so sorry for her for that. Because it's her parents that have done this to her, particularly her dad. I feel so sorry for her. I really do. But this is what happens when we engage in stupid culture war shenanigans. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you think down below about all this as well. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.